Hi everyone. So teaching students how to write about purpose in an authentic way and link that evidence in is like pushing uphill. So I've been rethinking it and I've got a few techniques that I think will work. Stay tuned. Right, so I've always resorted to the acronym WIPE for when discussing purpose with students. So to warn, to inform, to persuade, to entertain. It's really great because it reminds students what purpose is, because you can easily say, oh, remember our WIPE acronym. And also it's quite good at reminding them that we've used the word to before purpose. So to warn, to inform, to persuade, to entertain. It's a bit of a shame that we miss out that entertain one in English a lot, huh? That's something else for another day, though. Now, there are better words than wipe, though, because along the way, the author has a whole lot of other effects that they want to have on an audience. So many purposes, if you like. I once told a class that there was such a word as purpie, because it just seems dumb saying purposes, and they started putting them in their essay, so we had to knock that on the head. Anyway, that's a little aside. So better words than wipe. For example, along the way, an author might get us to horrify, to make us cry, to scare us, to anger us, things like that. Little activity that is quite fun to do. Do your alphabet up and get students to think of verbs and verb phrases, if you like, that help describe the reactions that an audience might have to a text, and then sort of bank that. And that's especially going to come in handy for this next thing, which is my big trick, my big reveal, is a way to get students to discuss purpose authentically. So are you all ready for this? Okay, so you've got to have students think of the creator as a social influencer. Let's, if you can't beat social media, join it. So get them to think of the creator as a social influencer. Now, social influencers, who students understand, right? They understand the power of them. They understand what they are trying to get us to do. They understand that social influencers are trying to influence our behavior. So half the battle is done with this new way of thinking. Now, show them that social influencers do these 4 things. They get us to feel something. They get us to think about something. So comparing it to our own lives and things. They get us to understand something. So that's that big kahuna main idea kind of thing. And they get us to do something, to act. And that little step we often don't even mention, but it's really important. So I'm going to read you a little example soon. And you'll see how students automatically, when they do that, they blend in the main idea as well. So I'm a big advocate of saying, getting students to use the word that when they discuss main ideas. So the idea is not discrimination. The idea is that discrimination makes everybody miserable. Okay, so the word that forces them to use to describe the idea in a full sentence. However, this new sequence that I've developed and been thinking about is actually forcing them to do that anyway. They splice that main idea in quite naturally. So here's an example that I prepared earlier. It's in the blog as well, so I will link that below. Here it is, and it's based on Steph Matuku's Flight of the Fantail and the main character of Devon. So the author wants us to feel upset with the way Devon is being treated and to think about how we may have ignored or left out somebody we think is different to us. She wants us to think about what we may have missed when we cut people off. When we see how amazing Devon is with her calm attitude and life-saving bushcraft, we understand, the third thing, that the people we've sidelined and perhaps even been cruel to could have added value to our lives. The author wants us to, and here's our do, get to know people before we judge them. So we'll talk about evidence there because I've blended that in. We're going to talk about evidence later, but can you see how the main idea was blended in there as well? It just came from that feel, think, understand, do sequence. So we talked about people we've sidelined and perhaps been cruel to could have added value to our lives. And we've also said that we should get to know people before we judge them. So we've sort of like two angles on a main idea there, but at least that sequence forces you to be a bit more specific and to talk quite naturally about purpose. So I mentioned evidence. So often that purpose sentence, and it is a sentence, is tacked on to the end of a student's paragraph. It's box ticking, right? And, you know, I'm one of those teachers that go for the checklist, as you know, and go for the templates, as you know. So fill this in, do this, do this, do this, do this, now do this. And so that purpose does become a bit of a box ticking exercise, and it's often at the end. However, here's a little take, and I put it on my Instagram and stuff the other day. Here's a little thing that might be good to practice. If you give students a piece of evidence from a text and then get them to talk about it with that feel, think, understand, do sequence, they will be linking evidence, main idea and purpose effortlessly. So start with evidence. Do this as a little exercise, you know, sort of one-off kind of exercises or activities. But then they will see how they all link. So that's my little tip of the day there. Begin with evidence and then take your argument out from there. Don't start with a main point to your argument and then, oh, where's some evidence that I can put in, because that becomes another box ticking thing. If you flip it on its head, start with evidence and then the discussion grows from there. Now, as you're using the feel, think, understand, do sequence, and as you're starting from evidence, ban the word purpose, because to me anyway, there's nothing worse than coming across that final sentence in the paragraph that says the purpose is to, it's like, ugh. So what about banning that word purpose? You might not even have to actually mention that if they're using that feel, think, understand, do sequence. You might find that they don't ever mention it. But you can always say to them later on, hey, you just talked about purpose without mentioning the word purpose, and doesn't it sound better? Can you believe it? You actually wrote a whole paragraph linking main idea, evidence, and purpose, and you didn't even mention the word purpose. And what an authentic discussion it is. Happy days. So that's a little tip too. Like, you want to get away from that word purpose. So hopefully you will have a great joy with that little tip, and you won't feel as though you're pushing, you know what, uphill any longer, and you won't have to read any of those single sentences at the end of a paragraph that say the purpose is to. Enjoy.